Good evening, I'm Dumelo Sitlaba and you're watching Business Live. In your top story this evening, Eskom is headed to court. The state-owned utility plans to challenge nurses' latest tariff decisions following a review of the regulator's reasoning. NERSA agreed Eskom price hikes of 9.4%, 8.1% and 5.2% over the next 3 years. This is far below what the company had sought and leaves it with a large revenue shortfall. Eskom's CFO, Caleb Kasim, says that the SOE is applying for urgent interim relief, which is necessary to avoid financial disaster. Denel is winding up its struggling aerostructures aircraft parts business. The decision is in line with the state-owned defence company's long-term profitability strategy. Closing the unit will affect 230 employees. Some workers will be transferred to other positions within Denel, and voluntary severance packages have been offered as well. The PIC inquiry has cost 25 million rand so far. That's according to Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola. Responding to a parliamentary question, Lamola advised that the bulk of that was incurred this year, and that the majority went towards compensating employees. The report regarding the Commission's findings is still being drafted and is expected to be submitted to President Ramaphosa by the end of this month. Another senior SARS executive has parted ways with the tax agency. Teboho Mokoena, the suspended Chief Officer of Human Capital and Development, has agreed to leave with immediate effect. This forms part of the clean-up plans at the Revenue Services. Mokoena was an ally of former Commissioner Tom Moyane, who was fired by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Mokwena's exit follows an announcement from SARS last week that the Revenue Service had also reached agreements with Luther Libelo, who headed SARS's employment relations, and former IT executive Mamate Makeke Mokwane. Peregrine has warned of a big drop in profit. The wealth and asset manager expects interim headline earnings per share to fall by as much as 45%. This is while ongoing headline earnings per share for the period are expected to come in between 10 and 15% higher. The group's financial results are scheduled to be released on November the 13th. So that's some of the news making headlines here at home. For a closer look at what's happening in the international front, it's over to Bronwyn.
That's right, we're taking a look at your global news headlines now, and for that, let's cross to Ulrich Bals from Deutsche Welle, who joins us from Frankfurt. Ulrich, thanks so much for your time today. So let's start off with a look at some company news. There's been a big surprise at SAP because the CEO of the company has announced that he will be stepping down. So walk us through, firstly, why he made the decision, then who's going to succeed him, and also give us a sense of how the market has reacted to the news as well.
Bill McDermott didn't give a reason. SAP didn't give one in the ad hoc and the official statement they gave at nighttime German time. People we talked to here were speculating a little bit health, a little bit going out on a good note, a little bit maybe pressure from financial investors wanting SAP to really step on the gas even further. One analyst said he really seems to be going out on a high note, and it seems to be planned because the successors are named, they're right there in place, and they seem ready to go. And Bill McDermott has been at the head of SAP, world's largest, second largest software maker and most valuable company in the DAX for some 10 years, and the share has almost quadrupled in his time there. Succeeding him will be people who are already on the board, serving under him until now. There'll be co-CEOs in the future, a German, Christian Klein, and an American, Jennifer Morgan. And incidentally, she will be the first woman at the head of a German DAX company. That's something for society and for the business world to have there. The market was jubilant today. I don't think because Bill McDermott was leaving. It can be seen a little bit as a tribute to him, of course, mainly though because of very good third quarter numbers, which analysts said greatly exceeded their expectations.
Okay, so that a bit of corporate news, but of course what is really dominating the chatter on trading floors is developments in the trade negotiations between the US and China, which seems to be heading in a positive direction.
That's right, and it really propelled the markets upward here. And in Europe, the DAX was up between 1.5% and 2%, and other markets in Europe also performing very nicely. The Italians and the French going up by over 1%. The British, the FTSE 100 lagging a little bit behind, but also gaining, and a completely different picture than on Thursday, yesterday, when the market was sort of being very moody, very sober about the prospects for Brexit and for trade. And today, a completely different picture, it seemed, through basically one word from Trump. He thought the trade negotiations were going very well, and that set the markets up, and strongly reinforced by a remark from the Irish PM that he thought the talks with Boris Johnson over Brexit went well.
Well, the US-China trade talks as well as Brexit likely to be themes that will carry through to next week. What else should investors have on their radars, though?
Well, lots of company news, and this is what investors are waiting for. And I think this is also something that's been reinforcing the share price this year. People are expecting that a lot of corporations will give good news and perhaps better news than in the past little while. Whether that comes up, we'll see. But next week is a big banking week with Goldman, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and even others reporting from the United States, but also non-financials, big players like IBM and Johnson & Johnson, and incidentally, also Netflix will also be reporting. And these are all market-moving potential newsmakers. Newsmakers will also be in Washington at the IMF World Bank annual, semi-annual meeting. And it'll be the first appearance of IMF Executive Director Kristalina Georgieva. And people will not be just looking at her updated world economic outlook, but also at how she seems to be performing in this role, because she's a vital player in the world's financial system in future.
So lots to look forward to. On that note, though, let's leave it there. Ulrich, thanks so much for your time. Ulrich Bartz is from Deutsche Welle. And then as we wrap up your international news segment, the vision for future mobility is diverging. Toyota has doubled down on hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, while James Dyson pulls the plug on plans for an electric car. So let's take a look at the detail.
Two very different verdicts Friday on the future of mobility. In Japan, Toyota is doubling down on vehicles powered by hydrogen fuel cells. It unveiled a new version of its Mirai car on Friday. The automaker has been working on fuel cells for 2 decades. Such cars emit nothing more than water vapour. And Toyota says they beat electric vehicles on range. The new Mirai can drive about 560 miles on a full tank. But the cars are costly to make and buy, over $46,000 in Japan after subsidies. And hydrogen filling stations are few and far between. As a result, Toyota has sold fewer than 10,000 Mirais over 5 years. By contrast, Tesla aims to deliver up to 400,000 electric vehicles this year alone. Meanwhile, James Dyson is calling it quits. The British entrepreneur is scrapping plans to develop an electric car. Dyson says he has a great design, but can't see a way to make it commercially viable. Attempts to find a buyer for the project have been abandoned. As Tesla's persistent losses demonstrate, building a profitable car company from scratch is no easy task.
Let's take a look at the international markets picture. Starting off in the US, the Dow and the S&P gained over 1.6%, while the Nasdaq edged up close to 1.9%. Over in Europe, the FTSE ticking up to 0.84%, the DAX gaining 2.86%, while the CAC 40 rose 1.27%. Well, that's a wrap of your news at this hour. Coming up, we look at the factors driving market moves from Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. Then we check in with the CEO of Zeda Investments, Norman Cilliers, as he fills us in on the company's strategy going forward. So stay with us.